So we left off. They went to the reservation. They learned about Linda and her son John, and now Bernard is just like, "Hey, why don't you come to the new world, or to the civilized world?" And yeah, that's where we are left off. Hold on. I just want to make sure. Yeah, I am recording. Okay. Okay, there we go. Alright. So now we're on chapter... No, wait. Hold on. Hold on just 1 second. I just need to check something real quick. Okay, I'm developing a very bad habit. Very, very bad indeed. Hold on just a second. 6. Okay, there we go. Yes, I am developing a bad habit indeed, and it must be stopped. It must. Okay. I keep on forgetting to name the files, the video files, after I'm done recording. And so, yeah, not good. Alright, so now we are on chapter 9. Yeah, we're on chapter 9 now. Linnea felt herself entitled, after this day of queerness and horror, to a complete and absolute holiday. As soon as they got back to the rest house, she swallowed 6 half-gram tablets of soma, laid down on her bed, and within 10 minutes had embarked for lunar eternity. It would be 18 hours at the least before she was in time again. Bernard, meanwhile, lay pensive and wide-eyed in the dark. It was long after midnight before he fell asleep. Long after midnight, but his insomnia had not been fruitless. He had a plan. Punctually on the following morning at 10 o'clock, the green uniformed octoroon stepped out of his helicopter. Bernard was waiting for him among the agaves. Or the agaves? I think it's agaves. Yeah. Bernard was waiting for him among the agaves. "Mrs. Crown's gone on Soma holiday," he explained. Can hardly be back before 5, which leaves us 7 hours. He could fly to Santa Fe, do all the business he had to do, and be in Malpais again long before she woke up. She'll be quite safe here by her. She'll be quite safe here by herself. Safe as helicopters, the octoroon assured him. They climbed into the machine and started off at once. At 10:34, they landed on the roof of the Santa Fe post office. At 10:37, Bernard had gone through the World Controller's office in Whitehall. At 10:39, he was speaking to his lordship's fourth personal secretary. At 10:44, he was repeating a story to the first secretary, and at 10:47 and a half, it was the deep, resonant voice of Mustafa Mon himself that sounded in his ears. "I venture to think," stammered Bernard, "that your lordship might find the matter of sufficient scientific. I venture to think," stammered Bernard, "that your lordship might find the matter of sufficient scientific interest." "Yes, I do find it of sufficient. Yes, I do find it of sufficient scientific interest," said the deep voice. "Bring these two individuals back to London with you." "Your lordship is aware that I shall need a special permit." "The necessary orders," said Mustafa Mond, "are being sent to the warden of the reservation at this moment. You will proceed at once to the warden's office. Good morning, Mr. Marks." There was silence. Bernard hung up the receiver and hurried to the roof. "Warden's office," he said to the gamma green octoroon. At 10:54, Bernard was shaking hands with the warden. "Delighted, Mr. Marks." His boom was deferential. We have just received special orders." "I know," said Bernard, interrupting him. "I was talking to his lordship on the phone a moment ago." His bored tone implied that he was in the habit of talking to his lordship every day of the week. He dropped into a chair. "If you kindly take all the necessary steps as soon as possible, he said emphatically. Emphatically. Yeah, he said emphatically, repeated. He emphatically repeated. He was thoroughly enjoying himself. At 11:03, he had all the necessary papers in his pocket. "So long," he said patronizingly to the warden, who had accompanied him as far as the lift gates. "So long." He walked across the hotel, had a bath, a microvac massage, and an electrolytic shave, listened to the morning's news, looked in for half an hour on the televisor, ate a leisured luncheon, and 2:30 flew back with the octoroon to Malpais. The young man stood outside the rest house. "Bernard!" he called. "Bernard!" There was no answer. Nonetheless, noiseless on his deerskin moccasins, he ran up the steps and tried the door. The door was locked. They were gone. Gone. It was the most terrible thing that had ever happened to him. She had asked him to come and... Hold on. Oh, yeah. They were gone. Gone. It was the most terrible thing that had ever happened to him. She asked him to come and see them, and now they were gone. He sat down on the steps and cried. Half an hour later, it occurred to him to look through the window. The first thing he saw was a green suitcase with the initials LC painted on the lid. Joy flared up like fire within him. He picked up a stone, and the smashed glass tinkled on the floor. A moment later, he was inside the room. He opened up the green suitcase, and all at once, and all at once, he was breathing Lenina's perfume, filling his lungs with her essential being. His heart beat wildly. For a moment, he was almost faint. Then, bending over the precious box he touched, he lifted it into the light. He examined. The zippers on Lenina's square pair of viscose velveteen shorts were at first a puzzle, then solved, a delight. Zip and then zip, zip and then zip. He was enchanted. Hold on, I need to adjust myself. All right. Her green slippers were the most beautiful things he had ever seen. He unfolded a pair of zipicaminics. Zipicamit. Zip. Zipicaminics. Zipicaminics. Yeah, he folded a pair of zipicaminic. Zipicaminics. Zipicamic. It is really hard to pronounce this goddamn word. Hold on. I feel like this might be just a made up word, but I feel like it might be like an old word too. Zipicam. Zipicamic. Zipicamicnics. Zipic. No. Zipicam. Oh, so it seems like it's a word that's very much associated with this book. So it might be just a. But it says here it's like a one piece female undergarment fitted with a zipper. So it's like zipper, camisole, and knickers, all combined in one word. Yeah. And I'm just like, why would you say something like that? Why would you make up something like that? I guess that's true. But yeah, he unfolded a pair of zipicamicnics. Yeah, he unfolded a pair of zipicamicnics, blushed, but put them hastily away. put them he blushed, put them hastily away, but kissed a perfume acetate handkerchief, and wound a scarf around his neck. Opening a box, he split. Opening a box, he split a cloud. He split a cloud of scented powder. His hands were flowery. His hands were flowery with the stuff. He wiped them. He wiped them on his chest and sorry, I'm just getting distracted. Um, yeah, opening a box, he split a cloud. He split. No, he spilt. Not spilt, split. Yeah, opening a box, he spilt a cloud of scented powder. His hands were flowery with the stuff. He wiped them on his chest and he wiped them on his chest, on his shoulders, on his bare arms. Delicious perfume. He shut his eyes. He rubbed his cheeks against his own powdered arm. Touch of smooth skin against his face. Scent in his nostrils of musky dust. Her real presence. Lenina, he whispered. Lenina. A noise made him guiltily turn. He crammed up his thieveries into the suitcase and shut the lid, then listened again. Looked. Not a sign of life, not a sound, and yet he had certainly heard something. Something like a sigh, something like a creak of a board. He tiptoed on the door and, cautiously opening it, found himself looking onto a broad landing. On the opposite side of the landing was another door, ajar. He stepped out, pushed, peeped. There, on a low bed, the sheet flung back, dressed in a pair of pink one. Yeah, dressed in a pair of pink one-piece zippy pajamas, lay Lenina, fast asleep, and so beautiful in the midst of her curls, so touchingly childish with her pink toes and her grave sleeping face, so trustful in the helplessness of her limp hands and melted limbs, that the tears came to his eyes. With an infinity of quite unnecessary precautions, for nothing short of a pistol shot could have called Lenina back from her Soma holiday before the appointed time. He entered the room. He knelt on the floor beside the bed. He gazed, he clasped his hands, his lips moved. Her eyes, he murmured. Her eyes, her hair, her cheek, her gait, her voice. Handlest in thy discourse, oh, that her hand, in whose comparison all whites are ink, writing their own reproach, to whose soft seizure the singence down is harsh. A fly buzzed around her. He waved it away. Flies, he remembered. On the white wonder of dear Juliet's hand may seize and steal a mortal blessing from her lips, who even in pure and vestal modesty still blush as thinking their own kisses sin. Very slowly, with the hesitating gesture of one who reaches forward to stroke a shy and possibly rather dangerous bird, he put out his hand. It hung there trembling, within an inch of those limp fingers, on the verge of contact. Did he dare? Dare to profane with his dare to profane with his unworthiest hand that? No, he didn't. The bird was too dangerous. His hand dropped back. How beautiful she was! How beautiful! Then suddenly he found himself reflecting that he had only to take hold of the zipper at her neck and give one long, strong pull. He shut his eyes, shook his head with the gesture of a dog shaking its ears as it emerges from the water. Detestable thought. He was ashamed of himself. Pure investal modesty. There was a humming in the air. Another fly trying to steal a mortal blessing. Another fly trying to steal immortal blessings. A wasp. He looked and saw nothing. He looked, saw nothing. The humming grew louder and louder, localized itself as being outside the shuttered windows. The plane. In a panic, he scrambled to his feet and ran into the other room, vaulted through the open window and hurrying along the path between the tall agaves in time to receive Bernard Marx as he climbed out of the helicopter. And that is the end of chapter 9. Alright, chapter 10. Chapter 10. Yeah, this is going to be a short chapter too. And then the next one is going to be longer, and that's when I'm going to leave off. I could do until chapter 13, but that seems like a long time. So I'll see, depending on like what time it is, maybe I'll do until 13, but I'm dead set on doing until 12. Okay, so chapter 11, chapter 10. Yes, chapter 10. The hands of all the 4,000 electric shocks and all the Bloomsbury's the Bloomsbury centers, 4,000 rooms marked 27 minutes past 2. This hive of industry, as the director was fond of calling it, was in the full buzz of work. Everyone was busy, everything in ordered motion. Under the microscopes, their long tails furiously lashing. Spermatozoa were burrowing headfirst into eggs and fertilized. The eggs were expanding, dividing, and if bokonovskified, budding and breaking up into whole populations of separate embryos. From the social predestination room, the escalators were rumbling down into the basement, and there, in the crimson darkness, stowing warm in their cushion of peritoneum and gorged with blood surrogate and hormones, the fetuses grew and grew, or poisoned, languished into a stunted epsilon hood. With a faint hum and rattle, the moving tracks crawled imperceptibly through the weeks, and the recapitulated aeons to where, in the decanting room, the newly unbottled babies uttered their first yell of horror and amazement. The dynamos purred in the sub-basement. The lifts rushed up and down. On all the 11 floors of nurseries, it was feeding time. From 1,800 bottles, 1,800 carefully labeled infants were simultaneously sucking down their pint of pasteurized external secretion. Above them, in 10 successive layers of dormitory, the little boys and girls who were still young enough to need an afternoon sleep were as busy as everyone else, though they did not know it, listening unconsciously to hypnopedic lessons in hygiene and sociability and class consciousness and the toddler's love life. Among these again were the playrooms where the weather had Above these, again, were the playrooms where, the weather having turned to rain, 900 older children were amusing themselves with brick and clay modeling, hunt the zipper and erotic play. Buzz, buzz, the hive was humming, busily, joyfully. Blithe was the singing Blithe was the singing of the young girls over their test tubes. The predestinators whistled as they worked, and in the canteen room, but glorious jokes were cracked above the empty bottles. But the director's face, as he entered the fertilizing room with Henry Foster, was grave, wooden with severity. A public example, he was saying, in this room, because it contains more high caste workers than any other in the center. I have told him to meet me here at 2:30. He does his work very well, put in Henry with hypocritical generosity. I know, but that's all the more reason for severity. His intellectual eminence carries with it corresponding moral responsibilities. The greater a man's talents, the greater his power to lead astray. It is better that one should suffer than that many should be corrected. Consider the matter dispassionately, Mr. Foster, and you will see that no offense is so heinous as unorthodoxy of behavior. Murder kills only the individual, and after all, what is an individual? With a sweeping gesture, he indicated the rows of microscopes, the test tubes, the incubators. We can make a new one with the greatest ease, as many as we like. Unorthodoxy threatens more than the life of a mere individual. It strikes at society itself. Yes, at society itself, he repeated. Ah, but here he comes. Bernard had entered the room and was advancing between the rows of fertilizers toward them. A veneer of jaunty self-confidence thinly concealed his nervousness. The voice in which he said, "Good morning, Director," was absurdly too loud, that in which, correcting his mistake, he said, "You asked me to come and speak to you here." Ridiculously soft. Squeak. "Yes, Mr. Marks," said the director portentously. "I did ask you to come to me here. You returned from your holiday last night, I understand." "Yes," Bernard answered. "Yes," repeated the director, lingering, a serpent on the S. Then suddenly raising his voice, "Ladies and gentlemen," he trumpeted. "Ladies and gentlemen." The singing of the girls over their test tubes. The preoccupied whistling of the microscopists suddenly ceased. There was a profound silence. Everyone looked around. "Ladies and gentlemen," the director repeated once more. "Excuse me for this interrupting your labors. A painful duty constrains me. The security and stability of society are in danger. Yes, in danger, ladies and gentlemen. This man," he pointed accusingly at Bernard, "this man who stands before you here is this Alpha Plus to whom so much has been given, and from whom, in consequence, so much must be expected. This colleague of yours, or should I anticipate and say this ex-colleague, has grossly betrayed the trust imposed on him by his heretical views on sport and soma, by the scandalous unorthodoxy of his sex life, by his refusal to obey the teachings of our Ford and behave out of office hours. Even as a little infant," here Here the director made the sign of the T. He has proved himself an enemy of society, a, a subverter, ladies and gentlemen, of all order and stability, a conspirator against civilization itself. For this reason, I propose to dismiss him in ignominy. Yeah, an ignominy from the post he has held in the center. I propose forthwith to apply for his transference to a sub-center of the lowest order, and that his punishment may serve the best interest of society, as far as possible removed from any important center of population. In Iceland, he will have small opportunity to lead others astray by his unfortunate example. The director paused, then, folding his arms, he turned impressively to Bernard. Marx, he said, can you show any reason why I should not now execute the judgment passed upon you? Yeah, man, he's, damn, he's being called out in front of everyone. And weird, it's not, hold on, there we go. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, he's like calling him out hard, saying he's evil, we need to banish him. The director paused, then folding his arms, he turned impressively to Bernard. Yeah, the director paused, then folding his arms, he turned impressively to Bernard. Marx, he said, can you show any reason why I should not now execute the judgment passed upon you? Yes, I can, Bernard answered in a very loud voice, somewhat taken aback, but still majestically. Then show it, said the director. Certainly, but it's in the passage. One moment. Bernard hurried to the door and threw it open. Come in, he commanded, and the reason came in and showed itself. There was a gasp, a murmur of astonishment and horror. A young girl screamed. Standing on a chair to get a better view, someone upset two test Standing on a chair to get a better view, someone upset two test tubes full of spermatozoa, bloated, sagging, and among those firm, youthful bodies, those undistorted faces, a strange and terrifying monster of middle-agedness, Linda advanced into the room, coquettishly smiling, her broken and discolored smile, and rolling as she walked, with what was meant to be a voluptuous undulation, her enormous haunches. Bernard walked beside her. There he is, he said, pointing at the director. Did you think I didn't recognize him? Linda asked indignantly. Then, turning to the director, of course I knew you, Tomakin. I should have known you anywhere. I should have known you anywhere, among 1,000. But perhaps you've forgotten me. Don't you remember, Tomakin? You're Linda? She stood looking at him, her head on one side, still smiling, but with a smile that became progressively, in the face of the director's expression of petrified disgust, less and less self-confident, that wavered and finally went out. Don't you remember, Tomakin? she repeated in a voice that trembled. Her eyes were anxious, agonized. The blotched and sagging face twisted grotesquely into the grimace of extreme grief. Tomakin! She held out her arms. Someone began to titter. What's the meaning, began the director, of this monstrous... Tomakin! She ran forward, her blanket trailing behind her, threw her arms around his neck, hid her face on his chest. A howl of laughter went up irrepressibly. This monstrous practical joke, the director shouted. Red in the face, he tried to disengage himself from her embrace. Desperately, she clung. But I'm Linda! I'm Linda! The laughter drowned her voice. You made me have a baby! She screamed above the uproar. There was a sudden and appalling hush. Eyes floated uncomfortably, not knowing where to look. The director went suddenly pale, stopped struggling and stood. His hands on her wrists, staring down at her, horrified. Yes, a baby, and I was its mother. She flung the obscenity like a challenge into the outraged silence, then, suddenly breaking away from him, ashamed, covering her face with her hands, sobbing. It wasn't my fault, Tomakin, because I always did my drill, didn't I? Didn't I? Always. I don't know how. If you knew how awful, Tomakin. But he was a comfort to me, all the same. Turning toward the door. John! She called. John! He came in at once, paused for a moment just inside the door, looked around, then, soft on his moccasined feet, strode quickly across the room, fell on his knees in front of the director, and said in a clear voice, My father! The word for father was not so much obscene as with its connotation of something at one remove from the loathsomeness and moral obliquity of childbearing, merely gross, eschatological rather than a pornographic impropriety. The comical smutty word relieved what had become a quite intolerable. The comically smutty word relieved what had become a quite intolerable tension. Laughter broke out, enormous, almost hysterical, peal after peal, as though it would never stop. My father, and it was the director. My father. Oh, Ford. It was really too good. The whooping and the roaring renewed themselves. Faces seemed to point in The whooping and the roaring renewed themselves. Faces seemed on the point of disintegration. Tears were streaming. 6 more test tubes of spermatozoa were upset. My father, pale, wide-eyed, the director glared at him in an agony of bewildered humiliation. My father, the laughter, which had shown signs of dying away, broke out again more loudly than ever. He put his hands over his ears and rushed out of the room. And that is the end of chapter 10. Now the director is just like, fuck, everyone's laughing at me. I'm a father. Now everyone is fucked. Yep. Okay. No, this is gonna be on the longer side. Like, usual longer side. Actually, no. Yeah, usual longer side. But I can't wait till I'm done reading. I made cheesecake today. I made an Oreo cheesecake. Yeah, it smelled so good. Alright, back to the story. Alright, so chapter 11. After the scene in the fertilizing room, all uppercast London was wild to see this delicious creature who had fallen on his knees before the director of hatcheries and conditioning, or rather the ex-director, for the poor man had resigned immediately after and never set foot inside the center again. Had flopped down and called him. The joke was too good not. It was almost too good not. The joke was almost too good to be true. My father. Linda, on the contrary, cut no ice. Nobody had the smallest desire to see Linda. To say one was a mother, that was past a joke. It was an obscenity. Moreover, she wasn't a real savage. Had been hatched out of a bottle and conditioned like anyone else. So couldn't have really quaint ideas. Finally, and this was by far the strongest reason for people's not wanting to see poor Linda, there was her appearance. Fat, having lost her youth, with bad teeth and a blotched complexion. And that figure, Ford, you simply couldn't look at her without feeling sick. Yes, positively sick. So the best people were quite determined not to see Linda. And Linda, for her part, had no desire to see them. The return to civilization was for her the return to Soma, was the possibility of lying in bed taking holiday after holiday, without ever having to come back to a headache or a fit of vomiting, without ever being made to feel as you felt the way after peyote, as though you'd done something so shamefully antisocial that you could never hold up your head again. Soma played none of those unpleasant tricks. The holiday it gave was perfect, and if the morning after was disagreeable, it was so, not intrinsically, but only by comparison with the joys of the holiday. The remedy was to make the holiday continuous. Greedily, she clamored for ever larger, for ever for greedily, she clamored for ever larger, ever more frequent doses. Dr. Shaw at first demurred. Dr. Shaw at first demurred, then let her have what she wanted. She took as much as 20 grams a day. Damn, that sounds like a lot of drugs. If people usually take like maybe 4 Soma, 20, yeah, that's how they spell it, but I'm pretty sure it's the same, like, content, same amount, I mean. Wow. Yeah. That's like gnarly. But yeah. That is nuts. Oh Jesus, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of drugs. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Dr. Shaw at first demurred, then let her have, then let her have what she wanted. She took as much as 20 grams a day, which will finish her off in a month or two. The doctor confided to Bernard. One day, the respiratory center will be paralyzed. No more breathing. Finished. And a good thing too. If we could rejuvenate, of course it wouldn't be different. It, of course it would. Yeah. If we could rejuvenate, of course it would be different. But we can't. Surprisingly, as everyone thought, for on Soma holiday, Linda was most conveniently out of the way. John raised objections. But aren't you shortening her life by giving her so much? In one sense, yes, Dr. Shaw admitted. But in another, we're actually lengthening it. The young man stared, uncomprehending. Soma may make you lose a few years in time, the doctor went on. But think of the enormous, immeasurable durations it could give you out of time. Every Soma holiday is a bit of what our ancestors used to call eternity. John began to understand. Eternity was in her lips and eyes, he murmured. Huh? Nothing. Of course, Dr. Shaw went on. You can't allow people to go popping off into eternity if they've got any serious work to do. But as she hasn't got any serious work. All the same, John persisted. I don't believe it's right. Yeah, I don't believe it's right. The doctor shrugged his shoulders. Well, of course, Well, of course. Hold on, I need to adjust myself. Okay. Yeah, the doctor shrugged his shoulder. The doctor shrugged his shoulders. Well, of course, if you prefer to have her screaming mad all the time. In the end, John was forced to give in. Linda got her Soma. Henceforth, she remained in her little room on this 37th floor of Bernard's apartment house, in bed, with the radio and television always on, and the Pouchwally tap just dripping, and the Soma tablets within reach of her hand. There she remained, and yet wasn't there at all. Was all the time away, infinitely far away, on holiday in some other world where the music of the radio was a labyrinth of sonorous colors, a sliding, palpitating labyrinth, which led, by what beautifully inevitable windings, to a bright center of absolute conviction. Where the dancing images of the television box, where the performers in some indescribably delicious all-singing feeling. Where the dancing images of the television box, where the performers of some indescribably delicious all-singing feeling, where the dripping Patchouli was more than scent, was the sun, was a million saxophones, was Pope making love, only much more so, incomparably more, and without end. No, we can't rejuvenate, but I'm very glad, Dr. Shaw had concluded, to have had this opportunity to see an example of senility in a human being. Thank you so much for calling me in. He shook Bernard warmly by the hand. It was John then they were all after, and it was only through Bernard his accredited guardian, that John could be seen. Bernard now found himself, for the first time in his life, treated not merely normally, but as a person of outstanding importance. There was no more talk about there was no more talk of the alcohol in his blood surrogate, no gibes no jibes at his personal appearance. Henry Foster went out of his way to be friendly. Benito Hoover made him a present of 6 packets of sex hormone chewing gum. The assistant predestinator came out and cadged almost objectively for an invitation to one of Bernard's evening parties. As for the women, Bernard had only to hint at the Oh, the sex gum? Oh, really? I've never heard of it. Is it like a Viagra sort of thing? Sex gum. Wow. Blue Chew. Wow. Yeah, it is actually a thing. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is neat. You can chew gum and have sex if you want at the same time. All right. The assistant predestinator came out and cadged almost objectively for an invitation to one of Bernard's evening parties. As for the women, Bernard had only to hint at the possibility of an invitation, and he could have whichever of them he liked. Bernard asked me to meet the Savage next Wednesday, Fanny announced triumphantly. I'm so glad, said Lenina. And now you must admit that you were wrong about Bernard. Don't you think he's really rather sweet? Fanny nodded. And I must say, she said, I was quite agreeably surprised. The chief bottler, the director of predestination, 3 deputy assistant fertilizer generals, the professor of Feelies in the College of Emotional Engineering, the dean of Westminster Community Singery, the supervisor of Bokanovskification. The list of Bernard's nobilities was interminable. And I had 6 girls last week, he confided to Helmholtz Watson. 1 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, 2 more on Friday, and 1 on Saturday. And if I'd had the time or the inclination, there were at least a dozen more who were only too anxious. Helmholtz listened to his boastings in silence, so gloomily disapproving that Bernard was offended. You're envious, he said. Helmholtz shook his head. I'm rather sad, that's all, he answered. Bernard went off in a huff. Never, he told himself, never would he speak to Helmholtz again. The days passed. Success went fizzily to Bernard's head, and in the process completely reconciled him, as any good intoxicant should do, to a world which. Hold on. Let me do something real quick. Okay, I am back. Sorry for all the noise. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm only going to go to 12 because I still have like 11, 12 more pages. So yeah, this is a pretty long one. Um, the days passed. Success went fizzily to Bernard's head, and in the process completely reconciled him, as any good intoxicant should, to a world which, up until then, he had found very unsatisfactory, insofar as it, insofar that it recognized him as important. The order of things was good, but reconciled by his success, he yet refused to forego the privilege of criticizing this order. For the act of criticizing heightened his sense of importance, made him feel larger. Moreover, he did genuinely believe that there were things to criticize. At the time, he genuinely liked being a success and having all the girls he wanted, before those who now, for the sake of the savage, paid their court to him. Bernard would parade a carping unorthodoxy. He was politely listened to, but behind his back people shook their heads. That young man will come to a bad end, they said, prophesizing the more confidently, and that they themselves would in due course personally see to it that the end was bad. He won't find another savage to help him in a sec. He won't find another savage to help him out a second time, they said. Meanwhile, however, there was the first savage. They were polite. And because they were polite, Bernard felt positively gigantic. Gigantic and at the same time light with elation. Lighter than air. Lighter than air, said Bernard, pointing upward. Like a pearl in the sky, high above them. The weather department's captive balloon shone rosily in the sunshine. Said the savage. So ran Bernard's instructions, to be shown civilized life in all its aspects. He was being shown a bird's eye view of it at present, a bird's eye view of the platform of the charring T Tower. The station master and the resident meteorologist were acting as guides. But it was Bernard who did most of the talking. Intoxicated, he was intoxicating. Intoxicated. He was behaving as though, at the very least, he were a visiting world controller, lighter than air. The Mombay green rocket dropped out of the sky. The passengers alighted. 8 identical Dravidian twins in khaki looked out of the 8 portholes of the cabin. The stewards. 1,250 kilometers an hour, said the station master impressively. What do you think of that, Mr. Savage? John thought it was very nice. Still, he said, Ariel could put a girdle or Ariel could can Ariel could put a girdle around the earth in 40 minutes. The Savage, wrote Bernard in his report to Mustafa Mond, shows surprisingly little astonishment at or awe of civilized inventions. This is partly due, no doubt, to the fact that he has heard them talked about by the woman Linda. Mustafa Mond frowned. Does the fool think I'm too squeamish to see the word written out at full length? Partly on his interest being focused on what he calls the soul, which he persists in regarding as an entity independent of the physical environment. Whereas, as I tried to point out to him, the controller skipped the next sentences and was just about to turn the page in search of something more interestingly concrete when his eye was caught by a series of quite extraordinary phrases. Though I must admit, he read, that I agree with the Savage in finding civilized infantility too easy, as he put it, not expensive enough. Yeah, that I agree with the Savage in finding civilized infantility too easy, or as he put it, not expensive enough. And I would like to take this opportunity of drawing your lordship's attention to. Mustafa Mond's anger gave place almost at once to mirth. The idea of this creature solemnly lecturing him, about the social order was really too grotesque. The man must have gone mad. I ought to give him a lesson, he said to himself, then threw back his head and laughed aloud. For the moment, at any rate, the lesson would not be given. It was a small factory of lighting sets for helicopters, a branch of the Electrical Equipment Corporation. They were met on the roof itself, for that circular letter of recommendation from the controller was magically in its effects by the chief technician and the human element manager. They walked downstairs into the factory. Each process, explained the human element manager, is carried out so far as possible by a single Bokanovsky group. And in effect, 83 almost noseless brachycephalic deltas were cold pressing. The 56 Yeah, and in effect, 83 almost noseless brachycephalic deltas were cold pressing. The 56 four-spindle chuckling. The 54. This book really confuses me because they actually spell out the words and they don't just use numbers. So, of course I could read, but it's like, okay, what? I don't know if that makes sense. But it's very confusing. Okay. I need to adjust myself. Again. Where was I? Yeah. The 56 four-spindle chucking and turning machines were being manipulated by 56 aquiline and ginger gammas. 107 heat-conditioned epsilon Senegalese. Yeah. Yeah, 107 heat-conditioned epsilon Senegalese were working in the foundry. 33 delta females, long-headed, sandy with narrow pelvises, and all within 20 millimeters of 1 meter and 69 centimeters tall. Were cutting screws. Yeah, all within 20 millimeters of 1 meter, 69 centimeters tall. Were cutting screws. In the assembling room, the dynamos were being put together by two sets of Gamma Plus dwarves. The two low work tables faced one another. Between them crawled the conveyor with its load of separate parts. 47 blonde heads were confronted by 47 brown ones. 47 nubs by 47 Yeah, 47 snubs by 47 hooks. 47 receding by 47 prognatho. Ugh. Yeah, 47 receding by 47 prognathous chins. The completed mechanisms were inspected by 80. I can't talk. All these numbers and I can't talk. The completed mechanisms were inspected by 18 identical curly auburn girls in gamma green, packed in crates by 34 short-legged, left-handed male delta minuses, and loaded into the waiting trucks and lorries by 63 blue-eyed, flaxen, freckled epsilon semi-morons. Oh, brave new world. Set by some malice of his memory, the savage found himself repeating Miranda's words. Oh, brave new world that has such people in it. And I assure you, the human element manager concluded, as they left the factory, we hardly ever have any trouble with our workers. We always find. But the savage was suddenly broken away from his companions and was violently retching behind a clump of laurels, as though the solid earth had been a helicopter. But the savage had suddenly broken away from his companions and was violently retching behind a clump of laurels, as though the solid earth had been a helicopter in an air pocket. The savage, wrote Bernard, refuses to take Soma, and seems much distressed because the woman Linda, remains permanently on holiday. It is worth to note that, in spite of his mother's senility and the extreme repulsiveness of her appearance, the savage frequently goes to see her and appears to be much attracted to her. An interesting example of the way in which early conditioning can be made to modify and even run counter to natural impulses. In this case, the impulse to recoil from an unpleasant object. At Eton, they alighted on the roof of the upper school. On the opposite side of schoolyard, the 52 stories of on the opposite side of schoolyard. On the opposite side of schoolyard, The 52 stories of Lupton's Tower gleamed white in sunshine. College on their left, and on their right, the school community singery reared their vulnerable piles of feral concrete and bit of glass. In the center of the quadrangle stood the quaint old chrome steel statue of our Ford. Dr. Gaffney, the provost, and Miss Keat, the headmistress, received them as they stepped out of the plane. "Do you have many twins here?" the savage asked rather apprehensively as they set out on their tour of inspection. "Oh, no," the provost answered. "Eton is reserved exclusively for upper caste boys and girls. One egg, one adult. It makes education more difficult, of course, but as they'll be called upon to take responsibilities and deal with unexpected emergencies, it can't be helped," he sighed. Bernard, meanwhile, had taken a long fancy to Miss Keat. "If you're free any Monday, Wednesday, or Friday evening," he was saying, jerking his thumb toward the savage. "He's curious, you know," Bernard added. "Quaint." Miss Keat smiled, and her smile was really charming, he thought. Said, "Thank you. Would be delighted to come to one of his parties." The provost opened the door. Hold on. I just want to look up something. Okay. Alright. Yeah, the provost opened the door. 5 minutes in that Alpha Double Plus classroom left John a trifle bewildered. "What is elementary relativity?" he whispered to Bernard. Bernard tried to explain, then thought better of it and suggested that they should go to some other classroom. From behind a door in the corridor leading to the Beta Minus geography room, a ringing soprano voice called, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, with a weary impatience, "As you were." "Malthusian drill," explained the headmistress. "Most of our girls are free martins, of course. I am a free martin myself." She smiled at Bernard. "But we have about 800 unsterilized ones who need constant drilling." In the Beta Minus geography room, John learnt that a savage reservation is a place which, owing to unfavorable climatic or geological conditions or poverty of natural resources, has not been worth the expense of civilizing. A click. The room was darkened, and suddenly on the screen above the master's head, there were the penitents. The penitents. The penitents. Yeah, they were the penitents of coma, prostrating themselves before Our Lady, and wailing as John had heard them wail, confessing their sins before Jesus on the cross, before the eagle image of Pukong. The young Estonians fairly shouted with laughter. Still wailing, the penitentes rose to their feet, stripped off their upper garments, and with knotted whips began to beat themselves, blow after blow. Redoubled, the laughter drowned, redoubled, the laughter drowned, even the amplified record. Yeah, redoubled, the laughter drowned, even the amplified record of their groans. But why did they laugh? Asked the savage in a pained bewilderment. Why? The provost turned toward him, a still broadly grinning face. Why? But why? But because it's so extraordinarily funny. I cannot talk, and it's peeving me off. Why? Why? But because it's so extraordinarily. Oh my god. Extraordinarily. I keep wanting to say it as the two words, and then when I say the two, I don't know, it just gets all fucked up. Okay. Why? But because it's so extraordinary. I hate myself right now. Okay. Because it's so extraordinary. Why do I keep on doing that? Why? I shouldn't be doing that. Extraordinarily. I'm trying to say that fucking word, and I'm not allowing myself to. Why? Hold on. Maybe I just need water. Okay. Whenever I just say the fucking word, just alone, I do it perfectly. But when I read this little fucking, I am very annoyed right now. Maybe I'm annoyed because this reading is taking longer than I thought it would. Okay, I'm gonna read it again. Okay, so I'll read it back to him. Ugh. But why did they laugh? Asked the savage in a pained bewilderment. Why? Why? I feel like I'm saying that wrong too. Why? The provost turned toward him, a still broadly grinning face. Why? Because it's so extraordinary. Oh my god. Oh my god. I am so sorry for the people that are gonna be listening to this on YouTube. God, I am so annoyed at myself. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm just doing it. Maybe the way the sentence is structured is making me fuck up that specific word. I don't know. But it's pissing me off. Why? Because it's so extraordinarily funny. There we go. I'm not saying it again. No, I lie. I'm gonna say it again until I'm happy with it. Why? Because it's so extraordinarily funny. There we go. Extraordinarily. 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 As you can see, I'm very annoyed. I am so annoyed. I know. I know. But I am not happy with it. I am not happy with myself. I am just not happy. Maybe I think I just want to stop reading and eat my cheesecake. Because I made cheesecake and I'm just like, I want to eat it. I want to eat it so bad. But no, I'm not gonna stop reading. I'm not gonna stop mid-chapter. That's not me. I know. God, it's really pissing me off. Okay. Why? Because it's so extraordinary. Oh my fucking god! Why do I keep on doing that? Why? I seriously hate myself right now. No, I did not. I don't care what you say. It's what I think that I care about. I am back. I don't know if I'm better than ever. No, I did not say it perfectly. I will continue reading once I have done it properly. I have not done it properly. I have done it properly, but I want to do it all the way properly. I am so frustrated. I could scream. I don't know why I'm so frustrated and so annoyed, but I'm really annoyed. Nothing you will say or type will change what I am thinking. You were typing. I don't know what you were going to say. Okay. I'm sorry. We wasted like 7 or 10 minutes just on this thing. I apologize. My fault. Alright. Sorry, you're just gonna have to give me a moment. to compose myself because I'm still not doing good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I will have some when I'm done. Thank you. Okay. Hold on. No, I'm just waiting. Okay. 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 I'm still not done being annoyed, but I'm gonna try again. But why do they laugh? Asked the savage in a pained bewilderment. Why? The provost turned towards him in a still broadly grinning face. Why? Because it's so extraordinarily funny. And the oh my god. Now another word I'm gonna get mad at. Cinematographic. In the cinematographic. And the cinematographic. I want to die. I wish I could read like an adult. In the cinematographic. Yeah, in the cinematographic. Yeah, in the I seriously want to pull my hair out. I am so done. And hold on. I'm gonna look it up. And I'm gonna see how it's fucking pronounced. Do I not know how to spell it either? Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. But how do I do... No. Sorry. I am just trying not to actually lose my cool. So I am kind of close. Alright. In the cinematographic twilight, Bernard risked a gesture in which in the past, even total darkness could have hardly emboldened him. Oh, god damn it. Okay, hold on. My PC is dying. Another thing that I could have prevented if I just put... There we go. Okay. There we are. Back at it. Yeah, in the cinematographic twilight, Bernard risked a gesture which, in the past, even total darkness would hardly have emboldened him to make. Strong in his new importance, he put his arm around the headmistress's waist. It yielded willily. He was just about to snatch a kiss or two, and perhaps a gentle pinch, when the shutters clicked open again. "Perhaps we better go on," said Miss Keat, and moved toward the door. That sounds like some sexual harassment there. But everyone belongs to everyone else in this book, don't they? Right? Ugh. Alright. I have to finish this in 30 minutes. I wasted so much time on that goddamn word. God, I'm such an idiot. Oh well. Perhaps we better go on, said Miss Keat, and moved towards the door. And this, said the provost a moment later, is the hypnopedic control room. Hundreds of synthetic music boxes, one for each dormitory, stood arranged in shelves around 3 sides of the room. Pigeonholed on the fourth were the paper soundtrack rolls on which the various hypnopedic lessons were printed. "You slip the roll in here," explained Bernard, interrupting Mr. Gaffney. "Press down the switch." "No, that one," corrected the provost. Annoyed. "And there you are. Oh, wait. Yeah, no, that one," corrected the provost, annoyed. "That one. Then the roll unwinds. The selenium cells transform the light impulses into sound waves, and there you are," Mr. Gaffney concluded. "Do they read Shakespeare?" "Oh, what the heck?" Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Um. Do they? Ugh, Jesus fucking Christ. It's just my dad telling me, texting me that he liked the cheesecake I made, and I'm glad. I'm gonna fucking dig into that once I'm done with this god awful reading. I am so annoyed. I'm still very annoyed. Um, do they read Shakespeare? Asked the savage as they walked on the way to the biochemical laboratories past the school library. Not certainly not, said the headmistress, blushing. Our library, said Mr. Gaffney, contains only books of reference. If our young people need distraction, they can get it at the Feelies. We don't encourage them to indulge in any solitary amusements. 5 busloads of boys and girls, singing or in a silent embrace, rolled past them over the vitrified highway. Just returned, explained Mr. Gaffney, while Bernard, whispering, made an appointment with the headmistress for that very evening. From the Slough crematorium. Okay, I'm not gonna reply to that. From the Slough. Oh my god. Let me fucking read. Okay. Are you fucking kidding me? Hold on just 1 second. Okay. 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 From the Slough crematorium, death conditioning begins at 18 months. Every tot spends 2 mornings a week in a hospital for the dying. All the best toys are kept there, and they get chocolate cream on death days. They learn to take dying as a matter of course, like any other psychological process. Put in the headmistress professionally. 8 o'clock at the Savoy. It was all arranged. On their way back to London, they stopped at the television court. On their way back to London, they stopped at the television corporation's factory at Bedford. Do you mind waiting here a moment while I go and telephone? Asked Bernard. The savage waited and waited. The main day shift was just going off duty. Crowds of lower caste workers were queued up in front of the monorail station. 700 or 800 Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon men and women, with not more than a dozen faces and statures between them, to each of them, with his or her ticket, the booking clerk pushed over a little card box. To each of them with his or her ticket, The book clerk the book clerk pushed over a little cardboard pillbox. The long caterpillar of men and women moved slowly forward. What's in those? Remembering the Merchant of Venice. Those caskets, the savage inquired when Bernard rejoined him. That's the day's soma ration, Bernard answered rather instinctively, for he was masticating a piece of Benito Hoover's chewing gum. They get it after their work's over. 4 half-gram tablets, 6 on Saturdays. He took Jarm's on. If you could see how annoyed I am by how I cannot fucking speak, you would take pity on me. Because I am just so done with reading tonight. But I don't like stopping mid-chapter. I just think it's a sin. You commit sin if you stop reading in the middle of a chapter. Okay. He took John's arm affectionately and they walked back towards the helicopter. Lenina came singing into the changing room. You seem very pleased with yourself, said Fanny. I am pleased, she said. Zip. Bernard rang up half an hour ago. Zip, zip. She stepped out of her shorts. He has an unexpected engagement. Zip. Asked me if I'd take the savage to the Feelies this evening. I must fly. She hurried away towards the bathroom. She's a lucky girl, Fanny said to herself as she watched Lenina go. There was no envy in the comment. Good-natured Fanny was merely stating a fact. Lenina was lucky in having shared with Bernard a generous portion of the savage's immense celebrity. Lucky in reflecting from her insignificant person the moment's supremely fashionable glory, had not the secretary of the Young Women's Fortean Association asked her to give a lecture about her experiences. Had she not been invited to the annual dinner of the Aphrodisian Club? Had she not already appeared in the Feelytone News, visibly, audibly, and tactily appeared on countless millions all over the planet? Hardly less flattering had been the attentions paid by her conspicuous individuals. The resident world controller's hardly less flattering had been the attentions paid by her conspicuous. Hardly less flattering had been the attentions paid her by conspicuous individuals. The resident world controller's second secretary had asked her to dinner and breakfast. She had spent one weekend with the Ford Chief Justice and another with the art community songster of Canterbury. The president of the Internal and External Secretions Corporation was perpetually on the phone, and she had been to Deauville with the deputy governor of the Bank of Europe. It's wonderful, of course, and yet in a way, she confessed to Fanny, I feel as though I were getting something on false pretenses, because of course the first thing they all want to know is what it's like to make love to a savage. And I have to say, I don't know. She shook her head. Most of the men don't believe me, of course, but it's true. I wish it weren't. She added sadly and sighed. He's terribly good looking, don't you think so? But doesn't he like you? Asked Fanny. Sometimes I think he does, and sometimes I think he doesn't. He always does his best to avoid me. Goes out of the room when I come in, won't touch me, won't even look at me. But sometimes I would turn around suddenly. I would catch him staring, and then, like, you know how men look when they like you. Yes, Fanny nailed. I can't make it out, said Lenina. She couldn't make it out, and not only was bewildered, but also rather. She couldn't make it out, and not only was bewildered, was also rather upset. Upset that she couldn't have that savage dick. Or she hadn't had that savage dick yet. Get it, girl? Alright. Because you see, Fanny, I like him. Liked him more and more. Well, now there'd be a real chance, she thought, as she scented herself after her bath. Dab, dab, dab. A real chance. Her high spirits overflowed in song. Hug me till you jug me, honey. Kiss me till I'm in a coma. Hug me, honey, snuggly bunny. Love's as good as Soma. The secret organ was playing. The secret organ was playing a delightfully refreshing herbal capriccio, rippling arpeggios of thyme and lavender and of rosemary, basil, myrtle, tarragon, a series of daring modulations through the spice keys and ambergris, and a slow return through sandalwood, camphor, cedar, and new mown hay, with occasional subtle touches of discord. A whiff of kidney pudding, the faintest suspicion of pig's dung. Back to the simple aromatics with which the piece began. The final blast of time died away, and there was a round of applause. The lights went up. In the synthetic music machine, the soundtrack roll began to unwind. It was a trio of hyper violin, super cello, and oboe surrogate that now filled the air with its agreeable languor. Languor. 30 or 40 bars, and then against this instrumental background. 30 or 40 bars, and then against this instrumental background, a much more than human voice began to warble. Now throaty, now from the head, now hollow as a flute, now charged with yearning harmonics. It effortlessly passed from Gaspard Forster's low record on very frontiers of musical tone to a thrilled bat note high above the highest C, to which, in 1770, at the Ducal Opera of Parma, and to the astonishment of Mozart, Lucrezia Adjugari alone, Lucrezia Adjugari alone, of all the singers in history, once piercingly gave utterance. Sunk in their pneumatic stalls, Lenina and the savage sniffed and listened. It was now the turn also for eyes and skin. The house lights went down. Fiery letters stood out solid and as though self-supported in the darkness. 3 weeks in a helicopter. All super long singing, synthetic talking, colored, stereoscopic feeling, with synchronized synth organ accompaniment. Take hold of those metal knobs on the arms of your chair, whispered Lenina. Otherwise you won't get any of the feely effects. The savage did as he was told. Those fiery letters, meanwhile, had disappeared. They were they were 10 seconds of complete darkness. Then suddenly, dazzling and incomparably more solid looking than they would have seemed in actual flesh and blood, far more real than reality. There stood a there stood the stereoscopic images, locked in one another's arms, of a gigantic Negro and a golden-haired young brachycephalic beta plus female. The savage started, that sensation on his lips. He lifted the hand. He lifted a hand to his mouth. The titillation ceased. He let his hand fall back on the metal knob. It began again. The scent organ, meanwhile, breathed pure musk, expiringly a track sound superdove cooed, oh, oh, and the only 32 times vibrating only 32 times a second. A deeper than African bass made answer. Ah, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. The stereoscopic lips came together again, and once more the facial erogenous zones of the 6,000 spectators in the Alhambra tingled with almost intolerable galvanic pleasure. Oh. The plot of the film was extremely simple. A few minutes after the first oohs and ahs, a duet having been sung and a little love made on that famous bearskin, every hair of which the assistant predestinator was perfectly right, could be separately and distinctly felt. The Negro had a helicopter accident, fell on his head, thump. What a what a twinge though on what a twinge though on the floor. What a twinge though what a twinge through the forehead. A chorus of ows and ayes went up from the audience. The concussion knocked all the Negro's conditioning into a cocked hat. He developed for the beta blonde an exclusive and maniacal passion. She protested. He persisted. There were struggles, pursuits, an assault on a rival. Finally, a sensational kidnapping. The beta blonde was ravished away into the sky and kept there, hovering for 3 weeks in a wildly antisocial tete-a-tete, tete-a-tete, tete-a-tete. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sounds French. Tet, tet, ta, tet, tet, teet-a-teet. Oh, I guess it's just teet-a-teet. I was trying to say it more, I guess, fancier in a way, I guess. Yeah, the beta blonde was ravished away into the sky and kept there hovering. Yeah, hovering for 3 weeks in a wildly antisocial tete-a-tete with a black madman. Finally, after a whole series of adventures and much aerial acrobacy, 3 handsome young alphas succeed in rescuing her. The Negro was packed off to an adult reconditioning center, and the film ended happily and decorously, with the beta blonde becoming the mistress of all her 3 rescuers. They interrupted themselves for a moment to sing a synthetic quartet with full super orchestral accompaniment and gardenias on the scent organ. Then the bearskin made a final appearance Yeah, then the bearskin made a final appearance, and amid a blare of saxophones, the last stereoscopic kiss faded into darkness. The last electric titillation died on the lips, like a dying moth that quivers, ever more feebly, ever more faintly, and at last is quiet, and is la- and at last is quite still. But for Lelina, the moth did not die. But for Lelina, the moth did not completely die. Even after the knights had gone up, while they were shuffling slowly along the crowd toward the lifts, its ghost still fluttered against her lips, still tracing fine shuddering roads of anxiety and pleasure across her skin. Her cheeks were flushed. She caught hold of the savage's arms and pressed it, limp, against her side. He looked down at her for a moment, pale, pained, desiring, and ashamed of his desire. He was not worthy, not their eyes for a moment met. Their eyes for a moment met. What treasures what treasures what treasures hers promised. A queen's ransom of temperament. Hastily he looked away, disengaged his imprisoned arm. He was obscured. He was obscured. He was obscurely. Yeah, he was obscurely terrified lest she should cease to be something he could feel himself unworthy of. I don't think you ought to be doing things like that, he said, making haste to transfer from Lenina herself to the surrounding circumstances the blame for any past or possible future lapse from perfection. Things like what, John? Like this horrible film. Horrible? Lenina was astonished. Yeah, Lenina was genuinely astonished. But I thought it was lovely. It was base, he said indignantly. It was ignoble. She shook her head. I don't know what you mean. Why was he so queer? Why did he go out of his way to spoil things? The taxicopter he hardly even looked at her, bound by strong vows that had never been pronounced, obedient to laws that had long since ceased to run. He sat averted and in silence, sometimes as though a finger had plucked at some taut, almost breaking string. His whole body would shake with a sudden nervous start. The taxicopter landed on the roof of Lenina's apartment house. At last, she thought exultantly as she stepped out onto the cab. At last, even though he had been so queer just now. Standing under a lamp, she peered into her hand mirror. At last. Yes, her nose was a bit shiny. She shook the loose powder from her puff. While he was paying off the taxi, there would just be time. She rubbed at the shininess, thinking, he's terribly good looking. No need for him to be shy like Bernard, and yet any other man would have done it long ago. Now at last. That fragrant of a face and the little round mirror suddenly smiled at her. Good night. Good night, said a strangled voice behind her. Lenina wheeled round. He was standing in the doorway of the cab, his eyes fixed, staring. Had evidently been staring all this time while she was powdering her nose, waiting. But what for? Or hesitating, trying to make up his mind, and all the time thinking. She could not imagine what extraordinary thoughts. Yeah, she could not imagine what extraordinary thoughts. Good night, Lenina, he repeated, and made a strange grimacing attempt to smile. But John, I thought you were, aren't you? He shut the door and bent forward to say something to the driver. The cab shot up into the air. Looking down through the window in the floor, the savage could see Lenina's upturned face, pale in the bluish light of the lamps. The mouth was open. She was calling. Her foreshortened figure rushed away from him. The diminishing square of the roof seemed to be falling through the darkness. 5 minutes later, he was back in his room. From its hiding place, he took out his mouse-nibbled volume, turned with religious care 5 minutes later, he was back in his room. From its hiding place, he took out his mouse-nibbled volume, turned with religious care its stained and crumbled pages, and began to read Othello. Othello, he remembered, was like the hero of 3 weeks in a helicopter, a black man. Drying her eyes, Lenina walked across the roof to the lift. On her way down to the 27th floor, she pulled out her Soma bottle. 1 gram, she decided, would not be enough. Hers had been more than 1 gram affliction. But if she took 2 grams, she ran the risk of not waking up in time tomorrow morning. She compromised and into her cupped left palm took out she compromised and into her cupped left palm she took out 3 half-gram tablets. And that is the end of chapter 11. Thank you so much for putting up with my bullshit and my frustratedness and me being annoying and annoyed at myself. I will be better next time. I will do better next time. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time.